He escuchato usando los dedos.
Escúchame, escúchame.
Are we on camera?
How are we on the camera? What the fuck?
We're not. Look at this. I have buttons and I press them. Hello, everybody. Welcome to WoW Wrap Up, episode 14. It's 14. We have only one more episode up until 15. And
that's how people count things.
It's a good celebration because we started the first wrap up with a lot of class changes and tuning, and we're doing that again today.
We're ending it. There's no more wrap up.
No, don't listen. Don't listen to him. No. It's fine. We're gonna do more wrap ups, but we had some hot fixes and some tuning that was announced prior to September the 17th. What? Are we dead?
No, I'm just agreeing with you. I'm just letting you know I have your back.
But first, a message from our sponsor. Our sponsor today is our lip syncing voices to the video. Is that okay? I cannot yell for Mokti because
our lips need to be synced.
Well, not 100%, but you know, close.
But 75.
Is it good? Because you don't want to make it weird.
It's kind of, I guess, too late. But how's it going, everybody? A lot of video delay. Ooh, a lot of video delay.
All right. Well,
video and sound seem out of sync.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing I asked. Thank you very much, everyone. How's it looking on your end?
On my end, it's looking like it's wiped. What? Who?
Minus 500? What is it?
Let me double check. Advanced properties. It is minus 500, yes.
Okay, put it to 0.
We'll
do that whole thing again.
It is set to 0. How is it now?
Okay. How worse is it now? Is it better? Is it way better?
Or
is
way
it
worse?
Manageable.
It's bad. What is bad? Is it worse or better? It's very bad. Okay. I assume that means it's worse, means to go the other way around.
Well, that we can go to max.
YouTube says much better.
Okay. Everybody on Twitch refresh. I think that's a good thing.
But it's not perfect. Way better, but not perfect. Okay, so
let's try 250.
250 coming right up to 50 milliseconds. Bam! We have 250.
Internet in Romania is really good.
But sometimes it's not.
It's really good. It's just a matter of latency. You know, it's a super dynamic, and sometimes it goes. We always have to fix this.
Okay.
So we can only do it live.
Artist says is better. Mike says, A-okay. Is it perfect, Mike? Do you feel like we could talk to you all day?
Perfection. Wow. Oh, that's what we're looking for, Mike. Okay, not necessarily perfection, but, not make it super awkward. Because, we talk
just a little bit awkward. Just, just the right dosage amount.
We don't want to be like the old karate flicks, like in the translation and the dubbing being way off. Yeah.
How are you doing today?
Welcome, Marcelian&Flame.
Perfection. Okay,
all right, good. We're good. So, wrap up, episode 14. I think today we're only going to touch on the class changes because there's a lot of them. If we have time, we can go into some different topics as well. But to be fair, there wasn't much that we didn't cover last week. And from the last wrap up until now, not a lot has changed. I mean, sure, we can talk about Race to World first and how that is progressing. And, the most important Race to World first is obviously Extremely Guild, where, and not Extremely, the Virgin Guild. The Virgin Guild, where we are part of, and we haven't started the Race to World first yet, but we're getting there. We're still doing our split runs, so don't get it twisted. All right, so
many splits, all of the splits on the same main character.
We have on the menu not all. I don't think we're going to go through all of because not all of the class changes are that significant.
Just the one that we care about.
We will talk about the ones that we care about. Well, obviously, it's only natural because we know
some classes matter, some don't.
We know much more about our mains than others. But there is some interesting development happening, and Fire Mage seems to be saved. Is that right, Flame?
Stay tuned and find out.
All right. Let's kick it off because there's a lot to go through. So we're starting off with the best class in the world, which is Death Knight, obviously, and we got some buffs to Sand Lane finally. Sand Lane was like, on paper, back on the beta, was really interesting to play, and it was good because you had a lot of haste and a lot of resources, and you spammed a lot of shit, and it was happy times. But then Live came out, and it was shit, and nobody picked it. So the general consensus about Sand Lane was that you never pick it regardless of content, not rating, not Mythic Plus, right? So they saw this and they wanted to bump it up to at least be on par with Rider of the Apocalypse. Let's see what has happened here and we can discuss. So Vampiric Strength chance to trigger has increased to 25%. Frenzied Bloodthirst, damage of Dead Coil and Dead Strike is increased by 5% per stack. It was 4%. Visceral Strength grants 8% strength. This was 6. This is huge. And they fixed an issue where Visceral Strength modifying base strength instead of total strength. This is also huge. Now, basically what this means is, like, if you play Unholy, you basically gain close to a 7% buff playing Sand Lane. But this only brings it to the level of Rider of the Apocalypse. It doesn't like go, here you go. See, I knew that would happen. This is why if the camera's focused on me. So you only get a 7% buff to how it, in comparison to how it used to be, which is fine. If you want to play that, do it. But it's not better than Rider of the Apocalypse. It's not like the main choice now. You're still going to go Rider of the Apocalypse as Unholy DK. I'm not talking about Blood necessarily. We can talk about Blood as well, but I'm guessing like a lot more people are interested in the Unholy aspect of it. Now, what hasn't really been discussed is an actual issue for Rider of the Apocalypse, which is from the hero talents. It's Apocalyptic Conquest. Ooh. So this is... no, it was not a bug. They just changed the functionality of it. So Apocalyptic Conquest now correctly modifies the total strength. It used to modify the base strength. Oh, okay. So now how Apocalyptic Conquest works, like while Nazgrim is active, you gain Apocalyptic Conquest, increasing your strength by 3%. But this was the percentage was based off your base strength. So anything you had extra would not be affected.
Isn't it
of it.
double now or something like that?
It's basically a flat buff of 4%. For Unholy, all right?
Overall damage?
Yeah. This is Rider of the Apocalypse, okay? Now, the whole idea of this is, yeah, they want to bring back, just bring up Sand Lane up to par with Rider, but they still cannot do it. This is not enough. The thing is, you can play Sand Lane and do decent damage, right? So the differences are not that big anymore. And over here, you can clearly see nobody was playing Sand Lane. You can see here everything is like, I snipped one. So this is the 91th log on this top 100 on Holy DKs. Then the guy from 91 is playing Sand Lane. He was the only one I could find. All right. All right, so this was after the buffs, and he did quite okay, but he was at the lower echelon of the logs. You want Rider of the Apocalypse, if nothing else, just for the pure utility of it. You can move around freely. You have the horse, and it's really awesome. Plus the fact that when you have Nazgrim up, then you have that 4% extra buff as well for your strength, and that is pretty huge. So the deal is right now without the Nazgrim. So if you don't have Nazgrim being popped up, then you're kind of on par with Sand Lane. But when Nazgrim pops up, then you're above it.
Is that big of a difference?
Yeah, it's big. It's big.
Okay,
because Unholy really loves its strength. Well, I think all like played melee love their strength. Regardless, it's a good change overall for DKs, especially if people like really enjoyed Sand Lane. You know, that's totally fine, but it's still not like the viable choice for playing Unholy to a semi-decent, I don't know, pushing heroic or maybe progressive mythic. You're still gonna want Rider of the Apocalypse. Like, it's so good, this raid feels you need a lot of like mobility and not being sucked into things and situations like that. Where you have that's advanced for it, but with Rider you also have the horse.
The improved that's advanced one with extra legs.
Yes, so it's like you cannot really go wrong with it. It's good, but it's not enough to like make it really count.
I don't think it will ever compare to not having, you know, I was gonna say pony, but you know that's charge, right? It's not really a pony.
No, it's not. It's not. I tried Sand Lane in Mythic Plus and in M0 prior to the season starting, and it's really not the same.
They tried to like bridge the gap. I would imagine they try to bridge the gap in mobility with I don't know what the name of the talent is, but the one where you pop Death's Advance and everybody gets a little bit of burst of speed. Stuff like that, where you just give your whole party like a little stampeding roar, but it's not the same. Mm-hmm. But overall, I mean,
it's good.
They keep trying to do this, and that's great to see. You know, for people who are hoping that I just want to be a Sand Lane vampire Unholy DK, right? The fact that they're keeping iterating on this is pretty good. Whenever they get it right, you know, to actually be competitive, then
there's also another aspect. Sand Lane is more difficult to play, and people choose accessibility and ease of use. Doesn't mean that Rider is like the easy easiest thing to play. It's still an unholy DK, but with Sand Lane, you do have a very different opener, and you have to like time a couple of things. So it's, you know, that also counts. You want the smoother, you know, much faster getting to do A to B damage wise. So it's okay, but it's not enough. Now for Blood, this is Sand Lane. Okay, Vampire Strike damage increased by 20%, and Infliction of Sorrow deals 15% of the remaining damage over time damage. It was 10%. Now, I took a little bit of a screenshot from the latest logs from Heroic, Nerubar, and I was looking at it. Okay, this is damage. Okay, so this is for damage. Yeah, this is damage. So Blood wasn't really doing that bad to begin with. Again, I think like Sand Lane was the 100% choice for Blood from what I saw.
Really? Not Deathbringer?
Oh, Deathbringer. Sorry, Deathbringer. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was about to say, because then if this
sorry. Yes, it was that. It was Deathbringer. I still don't believe these buffs will be able to top off Deathbringer because they're like, you know, like 20% like Vampiric Strike and, you know, 15% for that dot.
This is so ironic because back in beta I used to talk with Mandel, who is the theory crafter for Blood Decay back in Accuracy. You probably know if you've been there at any point in time. And he was like, but that was before they nerfed Sand Lane. It was like, oh, you're never gonna play Deathbringer unless Deathbringer just does way more damage, because Deathbringer just does not add almost any type of utility or defensiveness whatsoever. I think there's like something with the plates and whatever that just gives you like passive damage reduction. But overall, Sand Lane was kit-wise better designed for Blood, and now it's like totally opposite. Now you're not playing Sand Lane whatsoever.
Yeah,
because Deathbringer is just so much more damage. It just goes to show that even for tanks, like the way the game is designed today is there's no real tank bosses, right? It's either you don't really need extra tankiness until you just die all of a sudden. So that's kind of, there's like a barrier. There's like, and until then, rock on that Deathbringer and the sights and do damage.
I mean, still Blood Decay is quite an awesome tank to play.
For sure.
Nobody's denying that. I just feel like Sand Lane, the Sand Lane changes don't really push it up that far. It's kind of the same story with Unholy Decay, same as Blood. So damage-wise, Blood was okay, but this will not make it change to Sand Lane, not anytime soon, I feel. What's next? Oh, we got Demon Hunter.
Oh, Demon Hunter, damn, all right.
Okay, Demon Hunter had some issues, right? So...
oh, right, I remember these. Oh, yeah. Dude.
Okay, so this was for Havoc, right? So this was an issue where it caused I-Beam damage to be reduced beyond one target instead of 5. So when you I-Beam packs as a Havoc, you would hit one target full damage and then the others.
Yeah, I was just chatting the other day with our Patreon Arja, who mains Havoc. Apparently this bug was all throughout Dragonflight as well, where your I-Beam just didn't reduce damage beyond one target. So this
really, because I've seen some good numbers on Havoc on
but this is just I-Beam, Yeah, like the I-Beams is supposed to be like this giga big AoE burst, but it really hasn't been. And the irony part is, you know, probably the next one on the list has been also fixed.
Okay, fixed an issue that prevented I-Beam from benefiting from isolated prey's damage bonus.
So this is
I don't know what isolated prey is.
This is a talent that makes it so that if you I-Beam only one target, I-Beam does way more damage to that one target. So not only was it not doing any more damage past one target, it wasn't even doing more damage to that one target with isolated prey. So it was weird for Havoc, and I think maybe I might go on a limb and say that maybe this is why we're seeing Havoc do so well in Mythic Plus right now. Spoiler alert: there might be a melee M+ tier list coming out tomorrow, and Havoc might be looking some way or another. You'll have to check that out.
It would be meta.
But, oh, of course, meta analysis.
Speaking of Havoc, meta. There's also an issue, fixed an issue that prevented I-Beam from benefiting from Chaotic's dispositions damage bonus. So I-Beam was clearly messed up, really messed up
for a long time,
and it is now fixed. And we can this is like before the fix, and you can look at Havoc here.
Oh, it's still down there with the Warlocks.
Yeah, this is still Nerubar Heroic. It's not the worst, but it's not really shining either.
It's no Fury Warrior, I'll tell you that much.
And no Arcane Mage as well. So yeah, it wasn't. It's going to be interesting to see how Havoc will perform after these fixes, because you know I think there's one pure single target fight, or no, two bosses that are pure single target. The rest is like either cleave or some add damage.
I guess it depends, because for instance, for my Mage, I just run single target throughout the entire raid as fire, for instance. So some specs might actually afford to get a little bit more cleave. Other specs might not. So we'll see how that translates.
This is why Frost Decay is really good right now, because a lot
Breathless
of
and Drugosa, man. I'm seeing it on the meter.
Okay, Druid is saved, by the way, because we asked about Fire Mage. Is it safe? We're gonna get to Fire Mage as well, but let's check out Balance, Flame's former main. So all ability damage increased by 6%. Star Surge damage increased by 16%. This seems so random, 16%. Why just put 15 or 20? 16
Yeah, I don't know.
Seems
Like,
weird. They just want to be interesting.
It's like one person went to the meeting and said, dude, we always do 15%.
Yeah.
We
Let's
always
be
do
cool.
17 also. Did we? No, just put 16, man.
Okay, Starfall damage increased by 20%. Of course, not applied in PvP. Illusion Chosen. Lunar Calling increases Starfire's damage to its primary target by 80%.
Holy
It used
shit.
to be 65%. Now, we took a look a little bit at the logs, and Flame can explain a lot more here. So this is in Arakara plus 8 bosses damage. So all the damage done by bosses on a boomkin.
I think this was prior to the buff, right? Or when was
No,
this?
this was this week.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. So these changes came
This
with
is so terrible.
because like, okay, so you have like a Fury of Valun. Now we're looking at Starfall and Star Surge, right? These are like the main
I don't think
buffs.
they can see the name of the spells if you make it.
Hold on.
Yeah, but basically, like you see 14%, that's Star Surge, and there you go, perfect.
Yeah.
So the problem I think that a lot of Boomkins had with playing Boomkin is that Starfire is essentially one of your best single target ability as an AoE ability, and that just creates degenerate playstyles, not to mention that Starfire is a very long cast. This was the resounding feedback that we have heard in beta, basically what we also consider by playing Balanced Druid, that Starfire should not do this much damage in single target. I guess maybe that's what they want for Illusion's Chosen, but it's just such a bad way to play a single target caster when one of your best single target abilities is a very long cast. So being that close to Star Surge, I don't know if maybe that's what they envisioned for it. I cannot see this being good for the spec. Not to mention that in AoE, before the buffs that happened probably like 2 weeks ago, Starfire was doing even more damage than Starfall. So gladly that they buffed that Starfall damage to actually show way higher than Starfire.
Yeah, the effect is being shown clearly over there. So you can see definitely bigger damage on Starfall. But we also have bosses and trash damage.
Oh, that was just boss. Right?
Yeah, this is only bosses damage. Now let's check out the bosses
there
and
you go.
trash. Now you can clearly see the effect. Let me just zoom it out. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, just like I said. So Starfire is doing more. Wait, that's Moonfire. Oh, no, never mind.
No, so Starfall is obviously first place.
It should be, but it wasn't. It wasn't always. Not before the buff.
Okay, and there's also Starfire over there as well. Okay.
So this looks okay-ish. I mean, maybe you would
Boomkin is safe. What are you talking about?
Well,
did you see Arcane.gg?
Well, to be fair, Balanced was doing pretty high damage in AoE even before all of this, even before all of the buffs that we've tested in beta. I don't think a lot of people talked about that. I don't think the problem essentially was how much damage it did. It was the fact that most likely Loon's Chosen was just way stronger than Keeper of the Grove, which probably works a lot for a lot of Balanced Druids, because who wants to play trees? And also the second issue was that Starfire was just doing way too much damage, which is weird because they buffed the single target for Starfire even more. And historically, Balanced Druid has just been very, very terrible in raid overall in terms of boss damage. Even when I made it was probably the reason why I also swapped. Not probably, I know why I swapped. Because the boss damage was just atrocious, and it doesn't feel like the hero talents and the rework has addressed that. Maybe in the anniversary patch, who knows?
That's a lot of hope.
It's hopium
to be had, but I think Fire Mage would be first on the list if there are going to be any changes. Because Boomkin is already seeing some love. You can see that clearly.
More people playing Balanced Druid than Fire Mage.
All right. Next on the list is a Feral Druid. Blood Talents and Lion Strength no longer also increase the damage of Rampant Ferocity.
All right.
There's also a note here. In response to feedback that this change reduced the value of maintaining RIP and complicated using Blood Talents in AoE, we are reverting this change. So
I can definitely see that because normally
it was kind of a drag, to be honest. Yeah, I personally, I love the Blood Talents mechanic. Not everybody does. But
prior to this, like, I don't know, was it 2 weeks ago, they made Blood Talents actually affect Rampant Ferocity, which was never a case before.
No.
And I can imagine that Rampant Ferocity is kind of like your main AoE spender, considering that now you don't have to open wounds. So it ended up probably just inflating the damage too much. Maybe, but I mean, Rampant Ferocity only works if you have RIP also. So yeah, this is very weird. But
it is pretty weird. But overall, all the ability damage was increased by 3%. We have RIP damage increased by 6%, Ferocious Bite damage increased by 3%, and Feral Frenzy damage increased by 10%. Right. Hero talents, Druid of the Claw, Ravage damage increased by 3%. Now, I don't remember exactly, but I think Feral was doing decent enough. It wasn't at the bottom of the
single target, I heard people saying that Ravage was just doing a crazy amount of damage, and I'm surprised to see it being buffed. I mean, Feral isn't doing amazing damage anyway, so
not amazing, but it's not the bottom of the barrel either. So this is one thing that I always like to see. Instead of like over nerfing specs like Fire Mage did, like moving from beta to live. Maybe just buff up the ones that are not performed. This was like almost always they declared that they want to have this mantra, but it never happened. So glad to see some love for the ferals. All right. Restoration. Now this was interesting because restoration, oh boy, needed some love in the sense that nobody really played it and it performed like shit.
Preservation.
Okay, so all healing increased by 8%. Again, I'm mentioning this. All these changes are live. They're now in. Okay. So they increased all healing by 8%. Now, I don't know what that translates to directly for Druid, because Druid is a little bit more complicated under the hood, but it should be definitely felt. Now, also, it got damage buff all across the board. So Rat increased by 20%, Starfire and Star Surge increased by 20%. This goes into our age-old conversation about healers having to do damage in in keys most likely, because that's where like it matters the most. And I'm not sure it's on their philosophy or not.
First of all, I can see this because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the majority of the damage for restoration druids came from cat weaving.
I know
you would not press these almost at all. Maybe Starfire, never mind. Yeah, you would not press these almost at all. So having the damage being front-loaded into the balance spells, Wrath, Starfire, Star Surge, kind of points out that they maybe want to balance the damage output. I don't know if this overall increased the damage of Restoration Druids, but at the same time, if you are raid healing, there are definitely periods when there's not really much to do. So you're forced to deal some damage, kind of, people who, don't want to just stay there. And it's probably better to actually have to choose between either going into cat or staying in range, right? Because at the end of the day, you're still a range healer. Maybe you don't want to go into melee on the boss.
Not everybody's comfortable switching to cat form and going in there and dealing damage.
Yeah.
And I think having the option to deal some damage while everything is dotted up and hotted up and all prepared, having the option to deal some damage like in caster mode is way more in the safe zone.
Yeah,
as opposed to like being in cat, because in cat you are susceptible to some frontals, melee hits, and all of that. So I think it's good.
Yeah.
But the overall good feeling I have about Resto is this overall increase to healing to 8%, because look at the performance here at this is healing numbers. Okay.
That's an interesting way to put it, because I feel like Resto Shaman is one of the. But that might be just.
It might be also like people not parsing with all of these specs, but you can clearly see that in heroic at least from the latest logs and stuff, it wasn't doing that great necessarily. And it's the same situation in Mythic Plus as well. Like if you look like in Mythic Plus.
Oh, Mythic Plus we knew, yeah.
But they're okay, this is healing numbers, right? So they're still very close performance-wise. You cannot really like make a super difference out of them. I think it's a perspective where discipline is so efficient because it's obviously doing a lot of damage and healing through that.
I think usually this discipline is better at the beginning of a season, since everybody just takes a lot more damage.
It always is, yes.
The DR is probably way better.
Yeah, but now when you look at like Race Duel, first you see a lot of Holy Priests in those team composition. Don't see. I mean, you see some discipline, but Holy Priest seems to be reigning supreme right now because of the throughput, obviously. So I think looking at this data, it's a really positive outcome for Resto. Hopefully, we can see them a little bit more present in both of these of mesh upwards. And now we get to the star of the show, Mage changes.
Hey!
All right, so we have first of all the living bomb explosion visual now only plays on the unit that is
Wait, I remember they announcing that this would go live at 11:05.
It's big.
I couldn't tell that
this will bump your damage in the Rage Flame, like the visuals.
Especially if you pick the living bomb talent, that would go a long way into bumping its damage for sure.
Oh man, they give so much love, quote unquote, love to Living Bomb, but nobody plays it. We're gonna get to it, but let's start it off with Arcane. You want to go through the general ones?
Sure.
Okay, so Hyperthermia will now guarantee heating up, Hot Streak, and critical strikes when casting Flame Strike.
Okay.
Icy Vase no longer consumes ice flows. Living Bomb can no longer hit or spread to dead targets.
Oh my god, that's the one. Oh my.
This was a big problem. I know, but I know.
This was such a stupid bug to have, man. When you were hitting
Wasted
bombs
so much.
and it would just hit the dead targets. Oh, you're dead, bull. You're
burn.
and it's not like it's hitting everything and the dead targets. No, there's a target cap, and it would, instead of hitting the live targets, it would hit the dead targets. So that actually goes. And funnily enough, we'll probably get to it. But I did play Living Bomb today, so
we'll get to it. First, let's talk about Arcane.
The actual spec that matters.
Okay, so Arcane here, it's a thing of beauty, right? We all know Arcane Mage is like kind of like the king right now in like all spectrums.
Single target for sure.
Him and Arcane and Fury. I've seen some Arcane in Mythic Plus doing
well, but it's not. In AoE it doesn't compare. I don't think it compares to Frost, and it doesn't compare to a lot of other specs.
Yeah, it still holds its own. That's what I'm saying. So like overall, Arcane is a great package. It got nerfed all across the board. So we have Arcane Blast reduced by 5%. We have Arcane Missiles damage reduced by 8%. Sun Fury Meteorite damage reduced by 15%. Burden of Power damage bonus for Arcane Blast reduced to 20%. It used to be 30. Burden of Power damage bonus for Arcane Barrage reduced to 20%. This also used to be 30. And they fixed an issue that allowed Arcane Mages to generate 2 Spellfire Spheres at once.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like if you aggregate all of these nerfs, I don't know how much the impact is. It's not, right?
It's fine. I mean, this is the kind of nerfs that you want to see. This is the kind of nerfs that probably Fire Mages wanted to see instead of just being gutted into the floor. Definitely takes Arcane Mage down a peg. It's not a lot. It's not enough to make it not the best Mage spec in raid at the very least, and it's definitely not enough to make it a dead spec. So it's fine. I think some of the biggest... okay, so we talked about the DK Hero Talents changes. The Sun Fury being addressed basically just bridges the gap between it and Spellslinger, which Spellslinger is severely underpowered. And this is a breakdown of the damage that you can see, so you can kind of put it into perspective. I guess this is from a raid fight, from a single target fight?
I think so, yeah.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, the damage is still going to be fine. I think the biggest problem that Arcane Mages are facing today is the bug that I think has been created by the fix that they've addressed here. I think Porn from the Arcane Mage community made a post on Wowhead. It's a whole article about it. That bug... from what I understand, kind of made some of the race world first mages switch from Arcane to Frost. Because the bug is so silly to play with, it's so unfun, and it just really messes with your overall performance. Likely not gonna last very long, considering that they are very proactive at fixing all of these bugs rather. But it just goes to show that Arcane is just on a wild roller coaster trip, and it has been ever since it's been reworked. It's a little bit of a shame sometimes, but hopefully, it doesn't get the Fire Mage streaming because Arcane needs some love.
I don't see it. I don't see it going that far down. But you can clearly see.
Well, not now anyway, because everybody's maining Arcane right now. You don't want to kill everybody's main now.
For sure. It's obvious that you can see the Arcane Blast and the Arcane Missiles there, being on top of the damage profile of Arcane. So these are the ones that are taking the hits. Okay, they reduce the meteorite damage, but looking at it, it's not...
That's probably just to make Sun Fury more in tune with Spellslinger. That's not neither here nor there. The Arcane Blast 5% damage nerf, I mean, just taking this log, which is not all logs, but this log essentially takes 1%, maybe not even 1% away from the overall performance of Arcane Mage, but obviously coupled with the Burden of Power, which happens every so often, and Arcane Missiles as well. It's going to take away a little bit of that single target power, which is fine because, for instance, Arcane was about 30% ahead of Fire Mage, which is crazy. And I think still about like 5 to 10% above everybody else, which is a pretty big margin to have, pretty big delta there.
All right, we're getting there. Hold your horses. We're getting there.
Fire.
So, Fire. All right. Fire is... touched. It's saved, guys. Look at the whole list of changes for Fire. It's amazing. But at least you have like an overall buff of 6%.
For sure.
This went again live this Wednesday. But living bomb damage has increased by 25%. Now listen, we looked at logs. We looked at everything we can. Nobody's playing living bomb.
Nope.
I don't know what the hell. So I think their philosophy is we have to make this talent work. We have to make living bomb a thing, and people will love it and want to play it. The question is it enough? Now,
this is I think this is the log that I did today.
Yes, this is from the dungeon.
I have played the most living bombish build I think you can probably play to put as much damage as a living bomb as possible, and you can see it's not that bad. Even so, I think in this particular one, it was 7% of my overall damage, and this is after I've practiced with the build a little bit. I think I had a previous log where it was 11%, but that was like still very generous, which it might feel good considering it was 2% or not even before at the release of the season. But you have to take in mind, into consideration, that this living bomb is essentially 8 talent points synced into this one mechanic. And it's not like multiple points into the same node. It's 8 different nodes doing, you know, the 7% of the damage that you have, which is very, very, very tiny. Like, take a look at your talent tree for your spec, take away 8 points, and see how that spec plays, essentially. So this is still not enough. It's okay, it's not that bad. You can actually play it and not be a super troll, but you're probably still not going to play this in any competitive manner.
No, but seriously now, like if they really want to push this living bomb playstyle, because it is like really, really far in the talent tree, they would need to buff it maybe like 125%.
Yeah, that's
like make it like top damage profile, you know?
Well, just so you know where we're coming from, I can vaguely recall how it was in beta before it was nerfed. Basically, Living Bomb was in place of Ignite. That's how it used to be.
Right.
So, and after 2 buffs, it's still not even halfway there. The thing with Living Bomb is, like, I don't know their philosophy, because I don't think they've publicly stated their philosophy, but Living Bomb should kind of be like an alternative to the ramp up style of Fire Mage, which is great in high-end content, but for people who just tried lower keys, having that instant access to burst was great. Now, the way it was on the beta before it got nerfed into the ground was a little bit too degenerate, because you were just pressing combust, 1 fire blast, and then everything exploded. Yeah. It was cool, it felt nice, but it was a little bit too much. But the problem is that they've reworked Living Bomb. They've added the cool new animation. So it's
they put a lot of investment into it. This is why it feels a shame, and I feel this is why they're trying to push it. But these like small increments,
they're very careful.
Yeah,
because it could knock the whole meta out if they overbuff Living Bomb. Like everybody.
This is what I'm expecting, yo, because they're gonna get there. Okay, not knock the meta off, but they're gonna get there for sure. So you hold on to your fire dream. Keep on keeping on.
I'm holding on. Hopefully the guild holds on to me too during our progression.
But is Fire Mage saved at this moment?
No. I mean, it's not dead. It's, you know,
it's OP.
It depends on how you call save, right? Listen, if there's a corpse in the ground and the corpse started doing, I mean, that corpse is kind of safe, but it's not gonna fight in the war yet, right? It still has a long way to go.
Still has to be, okay, operated on and stuff like that. Okay, confirmed here. You heard it first, right? This is Fire Mage not saved just yet, but we're getting there.
First state first.
We're getting there. Okay, we have some monk situation here. So Mistweaver, which was doing better than Resto Druid, all healing increased by 3%. Tiger Paw damage increased by 15%. Rising Kick damage increased by 15%, and they fixed an issue that caused Restoral to incorrectly dispel magic effects. I would assume this was never reported because it was really nice. Healing overall 3%. I think that's just granting everybody a little bit. I'm not sure where they take their data from, but I'm guessing there's a lot of raid data coming in and seeing how the performance goes around. The damage, once again, I know somebody talked about Mistweaver, and I think it was Schwain from our guild who was mentioning that he's playing some sort of weird hybrid melee and range situation, which is weird because you either go for like the super melee heavy or you go for the range. That used to be the case.
It used to be in a very long time, and that changed around Dragonflight. And I know that now it's kind of like Holy Paladin. I think I told you where you just play a little bit of both.
And I hated that. I hated that.
On Holy Paladin, I do because it's great. On Mistweaver, it's a little bit finicky because, well, the 3% is probably something that we want to see every week, right? Whenever there's like an imbalance in specs, the 3% is not going to make it meta or break the meta or anything like that, but it's going to make you feel like, oh, I'm always below these healers. Okay, I'm a little bit closer to them. This is probably what we want to see from week to week, to just keep classes in tune, going up and down, and just make it feel all right. The changes to the damage, first of all, obviously increases the single target damage, but most of all, if I'm not mistaken, these also translate into healing. Rising Mist, I think, I forgot because they've changed it a whole bunch. I know there's a talent that translates the amount of damage that you do into some of the healing outside of just extending Renewing Mist. That might have taken away, but I'm pretty sure that it might still be there. So it might not just be all just damage there, but that's great.
It should translate into healing as well. Yes, that's 100%. Windwalker, not too much happening here. Just the Darting Hurricane's passive trigger rate reduced by 50%.
I have no idea what that is.
It reduces global cooldown by 0.25%. It was 0.5 seconds, not 20% seconds. So 0.25 seconds down from 0.5 seconds. This sounds like a nerf from what I can see here. And I've seen Windwalkers doing crazy damage in keys and AoE generally. So it looks like a smallish nerf, but again, we have to like get more data. And like usually when you have like notes like this, it's not really that telling. Okay,
it's always weird when it addresses because okay, so darting hurricane is after you use Strike of the Windlord. The global cooldown of your next 2 target Paladin is reduced by 50%. Your damaging spells and abilities have a chance to grant 1 stack of darting hurricane. Now, it says 50% in the tooltip. I don't know what that means. Maybe that equates to 0.5 seconds. I think the global cooldown is always something weird because we've had issues with this with other specs whenever they've addressed global cooldown reduction in some way, but it just never matched the actual rotation flow. I'm not convinced that this is necessarily a nerf. I'm pretty sure this is made to smooth out the rotation and not feel like, oh, my ability's done, but I just cannot press it, right?
Yeah. But hey, we're going to get to your favorite now.
Oh, my favorite?
Yeah, Holy Paladin changes here.
It was gutted, so I hear.
Okay, let's see. I don't know why people say that, but okay. So it just had its healing reduced by 6%.
Yeah.
Now, was there a situation where we had Holy Paladins like just destroying every type of content? I didn't really feel that way. I still felt like Discipline was the king up until Race 12.
Yeah, I haven't followed, like, I know that in raids, Holy Paladin were one of the best healers at one point. And I think they've been nerfed almost every week now since the season started.
They got some attention to him, yeah.
I mean, I felt like I was doing a lot of burst healing with Holy Paladin. It still feels very combo and cooldown based, which I guess is maybe not for everybody. Maybe a lot of people might not have felt this. The thing is, I feel like they're taking their data from raids.
This is usually the case.
It doesn't feel like it's...
Yeah, this is usually the case with the first waves of tuning. After the raid unlocks, especially like Heroic, when guilds start being poured in and you have the Race 12, they get the first data from there, obviously.
Yeah.
So the healing being reduced by 6%, I mean, it's not a huge number, but I can definitely see it. Some people, like, if some people seem a little bit too affected. However, the damage has been increased almost all across the board.
Yeah, damage was terrible.
I mean, from a healer that, was in there, in your face, doing the hitting damage abilities, it was shit.
Especially when you have cooldowns that increase your damage as well. Plus, you have Avenging Crusade. Oh, there you go. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we need to go through all of them.
So okay, Judgment damage increased by 60%.
Yeah.
Crusader Strike damage increased by 60%.
Nice.
Hammer of Wrath damage increased by 20%. And Avenging Crusader transfer amount reduced to 260%. It was 420%. Yeah. It's a nice number for.
So that's probably to keep Avenging Crusader in check, because if it was 420%, might have likely trumped.
Oh yeah, all of these buffs
choice
prior to this, they would have been through the roof as well.
There were moments when we did our little dungeon. And I was on a Holy Paladin, and there were moments where I just didn't have anything to heal, so I just went ham. I used DPS potions, went through my whole DPS rotation, and I barely did anything. And it feels bad, right? I don't want to out DPS DPSers. That's fine. As a Holy Paladin, I like to do damage. I mean, you're a melee Crusader.
For sure.
So when you don't do damage, it just feels weird. It feels like you're slapping them with a wet cloth
You
piece.
feel you want to contribute, but you do nothing.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good.
It's also Holy Prism single target damage is increased by 100%, and area of effect damage increased by 50%.
This is something. This is weird because Holy Prism, you mostly use it as an activator to make your Holy Light actually giga fat healing into it, and you kind of combine it with with infusion of light. So it's hard to think of Holy Prism as a damaging ability, although you can use it in a damaging way. And normally, if you would use it as a damage, you would target a party member, and then it splits into damage for your enemies. That's how you do damage out of it. So I think what they are trying to look for it is if you use it offensively on a target to deal more damage to that target and come back as healing for your party. Maybe that's the intent, but I don't know of any time people used Holy Prism to like, oh, I'm going to do some damage. No, they just wanted the activator for Holy Light. So I guess that's great that, it actually has the damage function.
It has the value of damage to it once again. So this is all good. Retribution. Herald of the Sun. Don't like damage reduced by 15%. That's it. Is this what like Reds played? Herald of the Sun?
Yeah.
Was Templar, right?
As far as I know, yeah. The people probably played Templar when it was bugged and you could do like 5 Hammer of Lights back to back.
Of course they did. Yeah. But this, if this is like the main choice, I've seen Reds doing crazy.
Yeah, downline was actually a pretty big part of your overall damage profile. I've played a little bit prior to the season. I haven't played in the season just yet, but it was also like a passive way of doing damage and healing. So it's kind of like
always not interesting.
Just buff me,
yeah,
buff my
nerf the
stuff.
passives, buff the actives. That's one good way to look at it. All right, Priest. There's for discipline, we have an issue where Devour Matter would cause Shadow Word Dead to incorrectly trigger too much higher amount of attunement killing than intended, and I saw this. Like the heals from when you had attunement up and you use Shadow Word Dead were amazing. Yeah, they were like I was like. When did we do last week? Did we do M0s with my priest? Yeah. So I was topping off the tank health with Shadow Word Dead.
Yeah, that must have felt so good.
Yeah, it felt good, but it didn't feel right. So they fixed this, but still, discipline is still really good.
Okay, that's great to hear,
from this.
I'm missing the discipline meta.
Oh yeah. Well, it's there. You play the most play healer at the moment.
In Rage,
I'll scroll up and show you the Mythic Plus again.
All right. Well, I'm looking at Raider.io. I'm seeing just every other healer except Priest.
God damn it, man.
Oh, there's one discipline in top 31. But
all right, fuck it.
The rest of Shaman everywhere.
I just want to get my discipline up there.
Listen, it's,
All right. Shadow also got buffed. Now, Shadow was struggling a bit, so these were warranted, right? All damage increased by 6%, and Cycling now inflicts 25% of its direct damage to targets afflicted by vampire touch. This was 30%. Now, I looked at what Public said, and he, posted the logs and stuff, and the rankings from Warcraft logs wasn't really something you could notice. But then again, because again, this is live, right? I mean, and specifically talking about the overall increase of damage of 6%. However, it's still a time where not everyone that logs has its 4-piece, and it's still very gear dependent. So the impact is not too big. I'm pretty sure he mentioned a couple of more changes a lot more changes that would be needed, but he felt good about it. So he basically said, just wait. It could potentially be better in a couple of weeks from now as people start getting the 4 set and a lot more gear. So
I guess it depends on how it scales, because if you look at it from one perspective, it's just a buff to single target and maybe like a net 0 gain in AoE, considering that you get all damage increased by 6%, but the transfer is 5% less. So I'm looking. I know that Shadow was really struggling in single target. It was doing pretty well in AoE. Now I don't know how well, but they did nerf AoE, so they didn't really want to go overboard. But these feel like Fire Mage buffs. These feel like we know you need more, but we don't know how much to give.
Shadow does way better than Fire Mage at this moment. So there's no question.
The tanks do better than Fire Mage.
Listen, I would remove all of these changes and just have like a big article for Fire Mage. But we'll wait for that. All right, time for the Rogue.
Oh my god, Rogue is another one that needs some love.
Well, not Outlaw. Outlaw was doing good, man. Outlaw was cooking. So, okay, Trickster, this is really good. Activating Coup de Grace no longer grants 1 second of immunity that prevents player actions for the duration. So remember what I talked to you about, like all of the Trickster issues?
Oh my god,
because that was based off of the Death from Above animation, and that used to make you immune for 1 second, and you would fly in the air and basically do nothing. Well, that was still in, but not the animation. So it felt really clunky. Okay, they fixed that. Finally.
All right.
But Outlaw was cooking. Outlaw was doing really good. So they kind of nerfed it. All ability damage reduced by 4%. Melee auto attack damage reduced by 8%. And you know, most people see this. That's white damage. But for Outlaw, that's very big.
Baby, because that also plays with Blade Flurry.
Yes, that is very big, so don't get it twisted. Dispatch damage reduced by 10%. Now,
that sounds big.
Hold your horses. So we have the 2 set bonus now grants listed abilities at 35% chance to deal 30% increased damage, as Shadow was 20% and 50%. So they nerfed, so they kind of transferred the base damage and moved more power into the tier set. Basically.
Do we know exact overall numbers?
We don't have like proper aggregated numbers just yet, because it's still very early on, right? But Outlaw is still cooking really good. It's still very good.
In theory, you take away physical damage that gets mitigated by armor and transfer into shadow damage, which is not, and that's that normally you would consider that a buff, I guess.
Yeah. And also, 4 set bonus between the eyes is increased to 15% damage per stack, up to 4 stacks. It was 6%, 3 stacks.
Oh, okay. I don't know how much this is for Outlaw. I'm not very familiar with how much increase in the tier set was. I know Outlaw was doing a lot of damage, but I think it was doing a lot of damage without the tier set. Obviously, nobody
obviously this is a huge buff because you have like what 3 stacks of 6%. That is 18% total. Okay, now you have 15% for 4 stacks. This is like 60% increase. So between the eyes, it's gonna hit like a truck once again. This is what I'm saying.
When it gets whatever proc it has for the force.
Yeah, they needed the love for this. Okay, so they needed the tier set to be a lot more competitive. But the fact that they kind of like, if they would not have nerfed the auto attack damage, the dispatch damage, and all around ability damage, the buffs to the tier set would be broken.
You know what I think this could also be is in reference to some of the issues that we know some of the specs had, where their tier sets were either a 0 gain or like a DPS loss.
Some of them some of them were DPS losses, and some of them were really
that
small.
was a weird situation to be in, where you just wanted eye level and not.
But I think overall Outlaw is gonna. Buffs and nerfs aside, tuning aside, the fact that they fixed this goddamn abomination from Trickster.
The biggest thing.
Yeah, and man, they took their time with it. I mean, we had like 2 months of beta, and we'll have 1 month of alpha, 1 month and a half of beta. That was always there, and I hated it. And I was playing sub. So
that's the thing with these types of fixes, and it's good that they're doing them. Don't get it wrong, but these are the kind of things you kind of want before the season starts, because people are actually deciding on their mains, and these are the things that they look at to decide as like what I'm actually playing in. Like, I'm probably one of the very few exceptions that I just stuck with Fire Mage because I just think it's really cool. And one of the main reasons why I stuck with Fire Mage is because, they're definitely going to buff it at some point, but it's not the current state that I want it to be in. I imagine that a lot of people probably didn't play Outlaw because either one of this bug was active.
Exactly, that's
because
me.
the tier set.
I wanted to main sub.
Oh, there you go.
And I wanted to play Trickster. And this was so annoying. I loved sub. I loved Trickster. I love the fact that in dungeons I could have just used my Shadow Strike and my single target abilities.
Oh my god, Nimble Flurry for subtlety.
But this coup de grace bullshit was just a turn off for me. So obviously the next best choice for me was Unholy.
That sucks. Like, people who just take it casually, that's perfectly fine, right? But for us that we kind of need a main to stick to. The fact this turns us off, and that's where you might lose players, right? This is probably why we're not seeing big nerfs to Arcane and Fury. Just like
not now, buddy boy.
Oh no, I think Fury's getting some, right? He's getting some.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. Let's check out enhancement Shaman.
All right.
So enhancement Shaman, all ability damage increased by 4%. Okay. Witch Doctor's Ancestry now reduces the cooldown of Feral Spirit by 1 second whenever you gain a Maelstrom weapon stack. It was 2 seconds. This is a little bit of a nerf.
Yeah.
Okay, but also the season 2 set bonus, season 1 2 set bonus increases the bonus damage of Storm Strike, Lava Lash, Ice Strike, and Crash Lighting by 10%. This used to be 6%. Okay, so they buffed the 2 set. I've seen this. This was kind of a theme on a couple of DPS classes where they kind of buffed the 2 set for a lot of them because it felt pretty weak. Now, enhancement was already cooking pretty good, I must say, in both raids and Mythic Plus. Sure, they kind of nerfed the Feral Spirit thingy, but overall, I think it's gonna be a spec to.
It's fine.
Look at meta. Okay, this meta, I would safely call it a meta spec.
Enhancement is pretty meta. I don't think this changes. The nerf to Witch Doctor is probably decently big. I mean, you get half of the cooldown reduction that you used to get, but at the same time, I saw our boy Mokti running with like 3 or 4 wolves, and I'm like, man, you're not supposed to have that many wolves out.
I didn't even know where he is. Like he was a wolf as well. He had
lost him in the pack.
Yeah, it was like a fucking of 7 dogs and stuff. Like what is this litter? But overall, I think. Enhancement Shaman is gonna still be cooking. This is all good. Nothing to be scared of. Actually, on contrary, we have some damage buffs for Restoration Shaman.
Okay.
Now you did say that you looked at Radar.io and saw a lot of Resto Shamans in keys.
Oh yeah.
Were they doing damage? Because
it's debatable because it doesn't really damage hasn't mattered that much since Shadowlands. Because the overall hero damage has been nerfed to such a point where it's great that you can do damage, but what's more important is to keep people alive. I think probably the main reason why Restoration Shaman is top, and we've predicted this in beta, by the way, is the Curse Dispel, the Poison Dispel, the Think of Spirit Link, and all of the shit that happens in Mythic Plus. That... likely, I mean, with Mage scaling all over the place, you might want Bloodlust, but I don't think you'd probably take a Restoration Shaman for Bloodlust. But you definitely have a lot of good utilities like All of the AoE stops are really good for the affix with the things, with the orbs. So yeah, it's a really good reason to have a Resto Shaman.
And also now it's going to deal some more damage because Lava Burst damage is increased by 12%, Lightning Bolt as well, Chain Lightning as well. All of these are increased by 12%.
Yeah.
So on top of being quote-unquote the best healer in Mythic Plus with all of its tools, it will also be able to do some more damage. So yay for Resto Shamans.
Eating well. Healers need to do more damage.
Okay, now we get into your territory once again. We have...
this territory died for me a couple of months ago, but let's see if it can come back alive.
Well, Demonology Warlock has its Demon Bolt damage increased by 20%. Wow, dude, did you expect that? That's huge. That's big with Demo meta.
Sure.
Pact of Eredruin Summon Doomguard damage increased by 45%. Now, you have to explain if this is going to be good because it sounds... whenever I see Doomguard, I get giggled. Like,
so
yeah.
they've changed how the Doomguard works, and I think most Warlocks that I have heard, and I'm counting myself I actually haven't watched Kalamazi's take. Kalamazi has like very generic takes, which is fine. You know, I mean, he is fine with a lot of the stuff. I'm not fine with how Demonology turned out. The fact that, you know, the damage is increased by 45%, that's basically a capstone buff. Your capstone does 45% more damage. That's a big buff.
That's what I asked for.
On the capstone. I don't know how much damage it's doing. I don't know if 45% is enough, but I haven't seen a single Doomguard so far with all of the demos that we're playing, and most likely Warlocks are playing Affliction anyway. So this is good. Demon Ball damage is just their hard focus intention of wanting your filler spells to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, I know. Not even touching on that. But Felguard damage is also increased by 15%.
But I think Demo needed that. I think... Yeah, it was behind Affliction a lot and behind a lot of specs, so this is probably just overall damage.
Okay, Flame, okay, but maybe you're going to be impressed by the Destruction Warlock.
Oh, buffs. Will I?
Yeah, all ability damage increased by 6%. This is like, okay,
I like it how they use all of those words in that little line of buffs.
But also, Dimensional Rift damage increased by 40%.
Okay, so Dimensional Rift, if I'm not mistaken, used to be the Legion artifact ability. This has been a long time. And they've brought it back in the rework for Destruction with a bunch of capsules and a bunch of other stuff that they took away and they brought back and... And the tuning was just never there. You never played Dimensional Rift all throughout the beta testing. And obviously ever since then, it was kind of hard to tell because there was no season to look at. And I still think that Dimensional Rift is probably still under tuned. Now, after this buff, maybe this is... kind of like a capstone as well. It's a spell that you would probably never play as Destruction, so 40% is a decent buff. I don't know if it's enough. I guess we'll have to see. And Channel Demon Fire also increased by 40%. That's kind of where you were half forced into playing, I feel, especially for Hellcaller.
I think it's Pog. I think this is going to bring Destruction Pog levels,
well, Destruction was, from what I understand, the worst of the Warlock specs.
Exactly. So it needed the 40% all across the board, but that Doomguard damage...
Across the board?
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Two things.
let's just make parties of 3 Warlocks.
But you still have the Demonology Doomguard damage from Pact of
Sure, let's not forget.
Yeah, let's not get there. But here comes the warrior.
I'm always on the fence with how my emotions should be going into warrior changes.
Okay, let's check out Colossus. Mountain of Muscle and Scars increased damage dealt by 5%, was 4%.
By the way, can we admit how cool that talent sounds?
Yes, I know. It's very, very on the line of we missed something in this game. But it's a 1% buff, so yay. Colossus, damage dealt by Demolishes 2 initial strikes increased by 2%. And for Mountain Thane, Thunderblast, Lightning Strikes, and Ground Current damage increased by 6%.
Okay,
we're gonna get into the specs.
This is definitely so. I can say a couple of things. First
say things, Flame. Flame is gonna say stuff.
Obviously, Prot Warrior benefits from from all of these changes because it plays both Colossus and Mountain. And it was doing a lot of damage. Prot Warrior is one of the tanks with the most amount of damage. Now it's the tank probably with the most amount of damage. It was weird that Demolish's first couple of attacks all did almost nothing, and the last one just hit like a truck. So I guess this just brings Demolish's all hits to actually feel like a skill that you're pressing, not just like, okay, when is the end of the channel while the damage hits? All right, that is probably good. Probably also to match, I believe, the damage output of Mountain, although I still feel like overall for protection, Colossus was doing more damage. I don't know for arms, though. For arms, I mean, for both warrior specs, we know that Slayer is the way to go. So I guess updating both Colossus and Mountain for arms and Fury respectively will bring them more in line with their Slayer counterpart, which that's great because we've seen it with DK, we've seen it with Mage, where they just balance the hero talents.
Yep. And they're gonna keep on doing that. Let's check out arms. Blaze Storm damage reduced by 10%. Huge. Get the fuck out. Get out and never come back. Yeah, that's it. Now come back. It's fine. It's all good. You know, this not. They're not gonna listen, man. Like, arms is gonna need some time.
That was like the only thing that made arms where feel arms. I'm pressing my Blade Storm, but.
They I don't know what the hell is happening. Like, they do some developer notes on a couple of these changes. This I don't understand.
Well, I would imagine it was doing a lot of damage, but isn't that what you want? You'd probably only play Blade Storm with
Blade
Slayer.
Storm. I would expect to do a lot of damage.
They not only took away a Blade Storm, they're nerfing the one that we have left. I mean, come on, man, you gotta give me some, dude.
All right, but one of the other kings that reigned supreme so far in most of the content is Fury Warrior, and lo and behold, it got nerfed. So all ability damage was reduced by 3%. Blaze Storm damage reduced by 10%. Hey, it sounds familiar. Odin's Fury damage reduced by 15%. And for Mountain Tane, do they play Mountain Tane or they play Slayer?
As far as I've seen, Furies, most of them play
Okay,
Slayer.
Strength of the Mountain increases blood thirst damage by 20%. It was 15%. Yeah, so there you go. They play Slayer for sure. So Blaze Storm, all abilities plus Odin's Fury reduced by 15%. Now, this once again was live on Wednesday. We did raid on Wednesday. We have, I think, Jojo is in our guild who plays Fury, and
he's still destroying.
He's still wrecking everything inside. So I don't mind seeing specs like Fury being on top.
That's fine. It's fine.
For sure. I just cannot really see, because I've seen Fury as well in Race to World first compositions.
So here's a problem that I have with these changes, which I could be wrong. From what I understand, some of these numbers are coming from Fury front loading a lot of damage into ads, because obviously they're taking this raid. There's no Mythic Plus data to base this on. So they're taking this from ads that die very quickly in raid, and most of the Fury's damage in AoE is front loaded into the first 7 seconds of your rotation, and then it just trails off. And all of the ads die in about that time. 10 seconds is probably as much as they last. So
hey, I noticed that as an unholy decay. By the time I ramp up my diseases and stuff, everything is dead.
If you keep those ads up for like 20 more seconds, it's likely more specs will close in on Fury, maybe even overtake Fury in terms of overall damage. So my concern is that they're too rash with these nerfs, especially since it's AoE from raid logs, and we end up in a Mythic Plus situation where Fury is just undertuned. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just saying
speculation
that it's a little bit too early to buff AoE abilities for a spec that's doing single target damage. Probably you don't want AoE abilities to trump your single target damage profile, maybe. But as far as I've seen from our Fury Warriors, Crushing Blow is kind of like the biggest one on the meters there when it comes to your damage breakdown.
Well, one thing you can take away from this is the thing that we always said when we did our tier list predictions and all of that. Yeah. They're going to keep tuning these even after the season starts. And people were not, no, tuning is done once the beta ends. Well, this is your evidence, and it will keep on happening. We also have to take into account the changes that are coming in 11.05 with the anniversary.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole bag of beans. But this reminds me, if you recall, when we did the beta wrap up, we had an episode that had Odin's Fury being buffed by 150%.
Yeah, I remember.
Because nobody would play that since it was so undertuned, and they buffed it, and now they're nerfing it again. So Fury Warriors are probably, squeezing their butt cheeks a little bit. It's like, wait a minute, are we taking Odin's Fury back to never being played ever again? So this is probably why. But listen, I might be overly dramatic a little bit, but somebody has to, because we don't want a second Fire Mage, do we?
No. And that would be a shame, because Odin's Fury has to be, relevant.
So cool.
Yeah, it has to be relevant, and hopefully they're not going to throw it to the trash and make it not playable anymore. But obviously there was a lot to get through. There was multiple changes, and once again, all of these were live starting Wednesday, last Wednesday. Nothing has been announced so far yet, so this is probably the last round, because we have started Mythic, and they kind of put the brakes on tuning when Mythic starts, Mythic rating, I mean. But once Race to World first ends, we're going to see the biggest changes overall. You already know we have the 11.1.0.5 ones, right? That's nothing compared to what's going to come. Be sure of that.
So we were talking about them announcing very, very early on the changes that we're going to have in like 2 months' time. It's like 2 months so far away. Not to mention that they're the cool changes. But at the same time, they don't want to overplay their meta changes, right? Even if they buff or nerf after the Race World First, you still don't want Arcane Mages to be nerfed because we have Arcane Mages main. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to swap to other specs. You don't want people to feel like...
It's a problem they create all the time.
Yeah, that's the sad truth. And... listen, it's good that they're doing these changes for the anniversary because people can plan ahead. It's like, okay, in 2 months' time, I might be shit or I might have to swap or whatever. So that gives people more room to play. But hopefully they don't mess with the meta too much because let's say you and I were very fondly playing Arcane Mages. You don't want to get nerfed and feel like you have to be forced to play other specs. Just like how do I feel that now about Fire Mage? So... it all goes to show that these balances, hopefully, we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen the big numbers yet.
No. So what we look with the logs that we took, they're like very fresh, and you cannot really make too much of an assumption based on that. We still have to wait a couple of weeks in to like have people get the tier sets, have people get their best trinkets, have people get a little bit more stats on them, and then you can see the impact a lot clearer. Let's say, but. Again, it's reassuring to see that they're looking at some things, and this gives me hope for specs like Fire Mage, which they're suspiciously not saying anything. Like, remember when we talked about the love Hunter needed, like in beta and alpha, and there was nothing shown, and at some point they said, listen guys, we're gonna have some Hunter changes, and those weren't like the ones we needed, right? Remember that. And then we got hit with the fucking 11.0.5.
Like, I'm pretty sure they had the anniversary in plan back in the beta, but they wouldn't have had it ready for the meta, and launching it halfway through the progression would have probably made people feel very bad. It would have probably made the launch very bad because like, wait, why aren't we getting this at the launch, the expansion? Why is my class going to be good in like a month, right? So they had to postpone it as much as they could. And once people have started playing, they probably, you know, with the anniversary press, like, listen, okay, there's more good stuff coming. It's always the feeling like, why hasn't this been at launch, right? But, you know, it's this cycle.
I mean, launch, listen, I think most of the specs did okay at launch, like leveling and stuff. You find a way to do all right, and not a lot of people put that much emphasis on, oh, my class is performing super bad in leveling. And all specs could perform in leveling. I think most people are really upset about, you know, they look at prediction tier lists from some people. They look at, I don't know, what they're talking in class discords, and, you know, get discouraged and stuff like that. At the end of the day, like, take Flame's example here. Fire Mage is shit. He's still playing. Like, he's doing plus 90%.
And it's still oddly making it work sometimes. Like, obviously, I've played today on stream. You might have caught it, might be not. I played Frostfire, Living Bomb, which is the exact opposite of what you're supposed to play. And still, there were moments where the damage was there.
Yeah.
It's just that sometimes when you look at, and you have to understand this, whether you look at our tier list, whether you look at guides or read guides, you have to take into consideration the data that those are based on. That's usually either extreme or very idealistic data that takes very specific situations and contingencies into account when it gives you that number, right? If something is like 5% better, when you look at tier lists and guides, you're only going to see that 5%, and everything else is not going to show. So you're automatically thinking it's like everything else is shit, but it's not really shit. It would be better to be a little bit more balanced, but there are odd exceptions like Arcane Mage, Sunfury being 30% above. Like, when I did my sims for Arcane and Fire, I was like, dude, I cannot justify to my guild of playing something that does 30% less damage than what it could. Yeah,
well, at some point you have to take into account this as well, especially like if you're part of like a progressing guild and you kind of want to help the guild out.
That's something I take onto myself. Like, we being part of a progression, like if I do 30% less damage than what I could, I cannot really say, listen, but this is what I want to play, but everybody needs a little bit more damage. When bosses wipe us at 2%.
Yeah, that becomes frustrating for sure. Okay, we have some more talent lifts, and I think we haven't really touched on the subject. We can touch it now.
Okay, touch what?
Delves.
Oh, delves. Oh my god. Really? We're talking about, oh shit.
Because like we haven't really like discussed it, and there was a roller coaster of situations with delves. Well, obviously right now,
I think it's kind of like the end of the delve season for the people.
For most of it, yeah, you can still get hero track in your vault if you do the 8s and whatnot, but it's more efficient.
We're probably gonna start getting myth track. People who do mythic rating, who probably push keys, will probably start getting myth track.
Like if you do, if you do 10 keys. You
Tens,
get
and mythic raids,
yeah,
bosses.
you get mid track. So now the thing is, like, honestly, like when they first put delves out here, like in the live game, I mean, so when we start doing them and stuff, it was interesting because we were talking amongst ourselves and everybody was kind of having different experiences, right? Obviously, Flame being a mage, they had the best time over there. Me as a DK, I kind of breezed through them. And then I saw streams with Flame with a lot more people in, like party of 4, party of 5,
was the
and
initial
whatever.
version of the delves.
Yeah, I'm talking about the initial version. So this is experiences prior to the hotfix because there were plenty of hotfixes, right? So I was looking at the stream and I was seeing the group constantly dying and struggling. And in the meantime, I was playing with Mokti in like 2 people delves, and we were just blasting through.
You know that meme with five group delves, and you see that dude's like sweating and trying to push that, and the other guy's like singing all the day. And that was basically these.
That was the
motherfuckers right here.
experience. That was the experience. And then after that, like immediately after that day, we got the first hotfix when they fucked everything.
Solos
so
are easy,
bad.
are harder rather. Or
So
easier, right?
they I don't know what the hell they did, but some of the bosses, like not even the bosses, the mini bosses, some of them like would one shot. Remember those screenshots for tanks that were
my
getting
God,
hit
right.
by like.
And also Sloot's tweet, man. Holy
Oh
shit.
yes,
He
yes.
actually did
I
the
think Sloot
numbers.
started the revolution on
Yeah,
delves.
that was a good tweet.
But they hotfixed it like a million times and patched it up, and it just gave me the impression that
It's
they
so much
really
weird now.
It's really weird because this was sold to us as the quintessential solo content for World of Warcraft. Okay, some would even go as far as maybe tangentially Mage Tower-ish.
I mean, Zekvir challenge bridges gets
yeah,
close
it gets
to that.
there. It gets there. Okay, now. What they did with these changes, well, basically, before the hotfixes, you didn't really feel you were doing good as yourself. It was better to party up. It was better to like have like you could not beat a comp where you had a tank, a healer, and 3 DPS.
You're not incentivized to solo them, no.
Yeah, there was like you definitely felt that, and then all the hotfixes came through, and it felt like, man, they really don't know what to do with this. I had this impression like, is it better to have a party for this? It shouldn't be, but it is. And it shouldn't not. I'm not saying that I would prefer it to not be a party thing. No, but if you're gonna sell it as the quintessential solo experience, make it better for solo players.
But that's weird because they do have the formula and template to scale flex content. We know that already.
Yeah.
With scenarios, with raids, you know, they
Apparently they don't have it for delves. That's a totally different.
There's some out there, and I think they did this with Torghast too, right? Where you can Torghast, you could play as a healer.
Let's not talk about Torghast
No, but
again.
no,
I'm
we're
so
talking
tired.
about it because the numbers that they used to scale the content were already
No,
there.
we're
in the
talking
game.
about it because people compare this shit to Torghast.
Oh my
That's
God,
why.
that's weird. But overall, let's review how the delves were, because initially they were sold as the solo content, like you said, but it turns out that you can actually get really good gear. You could get hero track before the season
If you
started.
have the map, you can also have the hidden chest where
And
you
even-
have guaranteed hero.
Even if you didn't have the map, it was a very, very easy way of getting
It
champion
was
track
okay,
gear.
but that was the case prior to Mythic's Mythic Plus starting. Okay, so I agree. It was like the best way to get your gear prior to the.
But that's also, they made it that way. Let's not kid ourselves.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not a coincidence
Well,
that Mythic Plus started
of course
later.
they made it that way. Yeah, this is exactly okay. Tinfoil hat. So they delayed the Mythic Plus season by a week to have everybody try their new shiny system.
It's not a bad way. Listen, but
It's
you're
not.
not. You're not kidding anybody. There's no sleazing.
Don't try
out
to
of
say
it.
it's not like that because we know it's like that.
We know, and that's fine. Listen, you make a new content, you want to sell it, you want to kind of make people test it. That's fine.
And guess what? I actually love them for doing that. Because
Yeah.
in another world, when we would
Nobody
have
would've-
delves, nobody would have played
Yeah.
it. And I think it's a great content to play. I feel like
I'm a big proponent of, if you make something new, make it, well, in terms of classes and specs, it's overpowered, but you don't make it over. Make it the best way to play the game at that point, because you have to sell it right now. And obviously, this just proves that whenever they've added them in beta, people were not incentivized enough to test out delves. Because if we've tested the delves out in beta, we would have known. Oh, if we go in group, this happens, or if you go
but there
solo,
was
this
a
happens.
lot of feedback though.
But there was,
on the
but
forums,
not
there was a
not
lot
like
of
M
feedback.
plus. And look how M plus, how much changes M plus needed, right?
No shot. I think like what initially like what sparked this idea for Delves was the actual, okay, they realized that they have a huge crowd, so not something they would neglect, that preferred to play solo. Okay, we know the tropes of an MMO, social, all of that was kind of killed a long time ago. You can still play social in World of Warcraft, that's not a problem, but there are a ton of players who play this game purely solo. Yeah. And this is their main incentive. Now, that is very conflicting with the fact that I think even now, it's still the best way to do a Delve, or the most efficient one, is to have like the Holy Trinity in there. You have a tank, you have a healer, you have a DPS, and you're good to go. Way better. It's good in solo, but it's good in solo because they buffed Bran. Bran's healing is really good now. Like the potions.
Here's my take, because in terms of approaching Delves, we're two different players, and I think the end result actually matters because we're affected by these changes differently. Right now, in terms of gear, let's say we're both incentivized the same way of either chasing it or not because we play the same content.
Yeah.
But once Delves do not provide any gear, if they remain the same difficulty, I won't want to do them. For me as a mage, I spend about 45 minutes in a Delve. That's not the content. That's not what they want.
Oh yeah. They want that to be what, 15 minutes or something?
Yeah. So for
10, 15 minutes?
Let's say they want to keep the content as evergreen as possible. Obviously, you would have to have a reason beyond gear to chase it, to do Delves.
And here comes Mage Tower situation.
Yeah, and I'm incentivized to chase cosmetics. I like cosmetics. I like to farm stuff. I don't want to feel like the only thing I do in WoW is chase high level. I want to, farm other stuff in terms of cosmetics. But if the Delves remain as difficult as they are, I don't want 45 minutes in a Delve. To fill out my Delver journey, in a month's time, obviously I'm going to have better gear. I'm probably going to blast them, but it's still going to be way harder than it should. And you're losing me as a player. You're losing the kind of player that doesn't just want the gear. I kind of like the content of Delves. I like to go solo with the brand, do a bunch of mechanics, find some puzzles, and unlock some cool gear, maybe some mogs for my dirigible mount.
You saying that, you reminded me of the first time they put Mage Tower in Legion.
Oh.
Man, the outcry that it was too difficult. It was too hard. Everybody was complaining, and man, I remember, so back then I only PvP'd, but I really loved the cosmetics, right? And I did it like on a rogue, we actually did guides for that.
Yeah, we have first videos of one that we did together.
But we did it like way after, like when we were way after. But that if I'm not mistaken, Mage Tower was introduced in 7.2. So
yeah, it was I think it was prior to Tumos Argyros. I think it was Nighthold, wasn't it?
I think so.
No, it was probably.
But regardless, it was very similar. The community reaction from what has been happening with Delves, very similar to what was with Mage Tower.
Okay, I remember.
I don't know if you remember, but I know I was back then. I was a lot on the forums. And man, the outcry. So everybody, and it was fucked up because back then you still were super reliant on your perfect legendaries. You didn't have the catch up system just yet when they introduced it. That was definitely
I was too shit to do it at launch. I had to do it.
Oh, me too. That was fucking hard, dude.
Or like pre and Taurus gear, but it was also different content. I see what you're saying, but Mage Tower had an ending point. Yeah. You did it. That's it, and you did it for multiple classes. Delves are repeatable content. That's way different.
True.
And it's way more Delves, and they incentivize it as a content that you want to do regularly. So it's a little bit sure we can talk about difficulty, but it's not necessarily about difficulty. And I think we've mentioned this before in prior wrap-ups or prior videos. The difficult part is not the problem. The unfair part is the problem.
Unfairness.
Then when you have the casts that two-shot you, I only have like a 20-second interrupt as a mage, like what am I doing with the rest of the cast? I guess I'm taking it to the face.
This is what I'm saying. It's not catered to all specs and classes. And this is why it's still better if you're going to be a mage to do that goddamn Delve with at
a
least
shaman. Give me that fast
somebody,
kick, baby.
Yeah,
I need that fast
somebody
kick.
that will help out. So it goes, it goes back in circles. It's like, okay, is this actually designed for solo or not? Because if you can design it for solo, you have to make it work for each spec.
I think it's more the better saying is like what class is this designed for and whatnot. Because
did they take that into account?
I've did a +8 with a mage, and we even have a video and recorded it. I finished it with 1 life left with like 10% HP. I was running away from that buff. I think I was frost. I had no cooldowns, no DPS cooldowns. I couldn't stay to cast because the one melee would hit me, and I was just throwing wet, unshattered ice lances at the target. Like, die already. I was like praying to Bran, execute him, please, for the love of God. I have nothing left. No potions, nothing. And it ended up that way. And with red, I was just cruised. Like, oh, I'm just Word of Glory. I finished with 5 lives or something. It's like, and red was 20 levels lower than
I know about this as well. I've seen Paladins in general had a good time over there.
I would say hybrid classes with some better defensive.
I'm no hybrid class, and I have a breeze in it. I have Death Strike, baby. That's what's up. Anti-magic shell. There's a lot of a lot of good stuff for DKs. Not even gonna flex it or anything, but it just goes to show that they weren't really certain themselves on what delves had to be. So at this point right now, yeah, sure, it's still good for most of us to do the 8 delves because you still have like more options for the hero track on the vault.
For tier pieces that can drop.
Tier pieces as well, yeah, they drop from that. But I think in max 2 weeks, we're not gonna care.
We're not the target audience anymore. Yeah. Unless you incentivize us in different ways. Obviously, we're not the target.
The Zivkir thing is very, very promising. The Zivkir thing, if they push on that could be.
The thing is, here's the thing with delves, and this is the real truth, right? It has massive potential to be awesome content in the future. Because Mythic Plus, whenever it was introduced, it was like a one-time thing. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. It was supposed to be the Legion version. And as somebody that really liked dungeons in WoW, the first glimpse of, oh my god, I really love what WoW changes is whenever they made you able to level through dungeons. For me, as a vanilla Andy, that was incredible. Oh, I don't have to quest anymore. Vanilla I can do dungeons.
Here's the classic vanilla Andy.
I've played the vanilla and TBC the most out of all of the expansions on private servers. And whenever they added Mythic Plus, we're like, oh my god, now they're relevant the way the raids are. That's so cool, right? And now they're doing delves. They're doing like a potential other end game type content that you can do that's just not what the formula brings usually. So it has potential, but Definitely. So did Torghast have potential, and they scrapped it.
The difference is like you kind of like got bored of Torghast or tired of Torghast.
There were a lot of issues, but what I meant is I hope
the initial potential.
Yeah, the issues doesn't stop them from iterating on delves and making it an amazing endgame content eventually in the expansion, which sucks that it's not now. But that's, the reality is whenever you're bringing something new, it's unlikely it's going to be in its best version, right? Same thing happened with artifact weapons. Same thing happened with Mythic Plus. And look at how the affix has evolved over the years.
Azurite traits, anybody who remember those?
Oh my god. Well, Azurite traits were shit until the end, but we got essences and we got like other cool stuff.
Essences were like the big band-aid for sure. Essences were cool though.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
This is the thing. They tried this with warbands. Remember Island Expeditions? They tried this. So if you look at delves, I think delves are the culmination of all these game modes they tried in the past and failed. Like you have like the war modes, Island Expeditions, Torghast, and you get to delves where you can kind of see some influence from each and every one. Like not in a major way, but like, small treasures here and there, XP buffs here and there, little powers, everything, right? So I think at some point delves had become this like ultimate construction of everything that was good about prior game modes, if you want.
And now that you've talked about Island Expeditions, Warfronts, Torghast, if you really think about it, delves are probably the best version out of all of these. We still have issues, but remember...
I prefer delves out of... Oh my god, don't give me that shit again.
Island Expeditions only became manageable once you just farmed them for cosmetics. When you can just go in and you didn't really care about it.
You forgot how much we farmed Island Expeditions
I didn't.
for... all right.
I didn't, but we did it then. But
yeah, cosmetics aside, my friend, we needed to farm the shit out of those.
But there came a point that I remember, I don't know if you did it, but at a certain point, it's like, I just want to get that mount. That parrot thing was the only place to get a parrot, I believe, or something like that. Islands or the Freehold dungeon back in the
Freehold dungeon, I remember, yeah.
So whenever it's just cosmetics, but the thing is, and that's what delves have to evolve into. Whenever there's no more player power involved, you have to make it easy. It cannot be, I want this cosmetics, but I have to jump through 10 hoops, 45 minutes, rotating my cooldowns just for cosmetics. That was fun, and Mage Tower for only having to do it once. I would probably not do Mage Tower again on the same spec, again and again and again.
Oh, by the way, also, one cool thing that they added for the delves is the Zivkir appearance. So I've never, I know it's nasty for you, but it's like basically if you play Diablo 4, you have the Butcher spawning in one of the dungeons. Here you have Zivkir, and he consumes one of your keys. So if you kill him, Mokti, while we were recording.
Oh,
and
it's a
stuff.
key?
Yeah,
And gives
because
you
he had
treasure.
only one key in his delve, right? He killed Zevkir, he got a nice piece of loot, like a hero track, all of that, but his key was bye-bye. So at the end, no more. So if you go into an 8, right, a bountiful 8, you may need to make sure you have 2 keys at least, because maybe Zevkir would show up.
You say that because it's a very good comparison with Butch and Diablo 4.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Butch was unkillable?
Yes.
That's how it is now.
For you.
For me, because I actually did it. I don't know what delve. I don't know if I recall.
Oh, it appeared for you too, right?
Yeah.
And it killed you.
In the middle, because it's already hard as a mage to do the packs. I was inside of a pack. I was like, okay, I barely have my cooldowns. Like, I see this big thought. I was like, oh, fuck me, it's not happening. Not when I can barely deal with my pack. And it's not like Zevkir comes. It's hard. I mean, I don't know how it is once you fully fight, but for me, it two shot me. And there's nowhere for me to go. Like, where am I supposed to go? I don't have any healing. Like, the problem with specs or classes like Mage is that if you don't have a sustain class, once you take the damage, it's there.
Just pop your shield.
There's no, well, that's 30% of my HP. Thank you. And that's once every like a couple of minutes.
I know. I know.
So yeah, it's the dichotomy between how some of the specs work.
It's a cool thing that they added the Zevkir pop-ups, but once again,
the fact that it eats your key, that's kind of nuts though.
Yeah, but if you kill him, you do get reward. You get gear. So it's like basically you ended the delve. You get that champion track, whatever. Like if you go to a bountiful, right, and you have like the key, you have that guaranteed champion loot. That's what you get from him, right? So it's still really good. All right,
it's fun, but
delves or not. Shall we take some comments?
There's not a lot today, so guys, if you want, now you can ask us all sorts of questions regarding all of the topics, or maybe off topics as well. We have a couple of minutes where at the end of the show we actually go into interacting with both of you, because there's YouTube and Twitch as well. There are a couple of questions that Arja pasted here, but there's not that many. In regards to Resto Druid, she said, our Druid did feel somewhat better in the key I tried. The real test will come in raid. In my experience, it was terrible as a raid healer for some time, especially in the War Within. The throughput is so low. Our kit was gutted and losing the tier hurts. There's hope for 1105. I cannot speak a lot to the Resto Druid experience now on live. But when it comes to healers, especially healers like Resto Druid and Paladin that are very combo based and have a lot of contingencies, so how their healing comes out, it might feel a little bit difficult, but it's not unheard of. Pretty much everybody that knows anything about Resto Druid has said that the overall throughput is a little bit too low compared to the other. So healers.
it was warranted.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, healers are always going to be a subject, especially the healers that are not like straight to your face like Resto. Definitely, because Resto is so complicated under the hood. It's you can so easily make it like super overpowered, and we had instances where Resto was super overpowered in the past.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they're taking a more safe approach.
Kind of like Fire Mage, yeah, for sure. Okay, speaking of healers with Holy Paladin, Patrick is saying that it comes out within 1%, I think, the changes for Avenging Crusader. So we're talking about the damage increase and the transfer of healing.
Okay.
So they're essentially buffing, from what I understand from what you're saying, the throughput of the Avenging Crusader style playstyle by 1%, or is Avenging Crusader playstyle 1% ahead of the non-Avenging Crusader playstyle?
Well, it was... So the transfer was lowered, but it was basically buff damage, right? So
yeah. Well, the damage is definitely needed, and the transfer is probably lowered to not make sure that Avenging Crusader is just like going really, really nuts.
Yeah. So it was all healing was reduced by 6%, and then you had Judgment and Crusader Strike were increased by 60%, and Hammer of Wrath by 20%. Avenging Crusader transfer amount was reduced to 260%. It was down from 420%.
I think that needs to be nerfed more than the damage gain, because you don't want to incentivize a playstyle that needs you to do damage for all the people. You want the pure healing to be the way, and damage to be just a trade-off. Okay, you do more damage, but you don't do as much healing. All right. We have a question or a comment from Zephy. I think people shouldn't need to swap classes and specs for the meta. That is very true. It depends on people, right? So okay, let's take.
If you're gonna go into Race to Will first, you're kind of forced to do that.
But yeah, Race to Will first is one, but that's like so detached from the average player's
it's a different game mode for them.
Like sometimes consider ourselves casuals in the way that we approach WoW, but I don't think we're casual. We're definitely not casuals. We're definitely in the top % of players because
we consider ourselves casuals, but in comparison to the actual casual crowd, we're not.
The
there.
number of people that raid and the number of people that raid Mythic, like, this is very, very distracting. So we're not necessarily casuals, but in terms of Mythic raiders, we can take my example as well, but I think Marcelian can attest to this as well. When Amir still, we swapped characters because we weren't performing well with them. So you shouldn't chase the meta. That's not a thing. But in a guild or in the kind of progress that we want cutting edge, and we feel like it's not about the meta. But if I feel like if I swapped to my off spec, I do 2% more damage, and whenever bosses die. Whenever bosses wipe us at about 2%, the fact that I play the fact that I'm not playing the better spec causes us the wipe or might have gotten us the kill. If I did play that feels bad for me as a player when I know it's like I could have done better to get that kill. Because what matters I would imagine for players like me, like I don't really care about the gear. I want that kill. Like if I get that kill, I don't really.
The biggest achievement.
Yeah. Outside of just having fun with my guild, I don't really care about farm nights. That's boring. I want the kill. I want to down that boss. And what happens that is like whatever. Sure, we go back into the raid and farm the bosses, but I want that achievement. I want that. Oh, I worked so hard. I learned my rotation. I learned the mechanics. I downed this boss. That's it. So there are definitely players that play like this, and for those players, it makes a little bit more sense to chase the meta, but not necessarily chase the meta, but try to take anything that you can to improve and do a little bit better. If you can with your spec, that's great.
But if not, you don't want to drag the team down.
The bad part is where I agree is that you don't want to be forced to change. Because whenever my Arcane spec does 20 to 30% more damage than my first spec, I'm like, well, I mean, what am I doing, right? I'm playing essentially like a close to tank level spec right here. So that feels bad.
Yeah. And even like in our situation with the guild, what happened in Amir, it was not something like, okay, you need to switch to something meta. It was basically, I acknowledge I'm shit. You can let me change on something that I'm more good at or something like that. And that was like totally the vibe. So I didn't really switch to meta. I think I switched to Outlaw Rogue. And that was not really meta in the raid, but I was definitely helping the guild better than on Discipline Priest, I think it was at the time. So it just goes to show, not necessarily meta, but if you're going to play something that will drag the team down, not the best feeling in the world, let's say.
Sure. Okay, we have a question from Zcon, and then something else that I want to get to. Zcon is asking, what type of classes / specs do you reckon will end up being at the top? And he asks us to mention 10 of them. At the top, in terms of overall performance, he doesn't mention Raid or Mythic Plus, so I guess we just take it overall. What type of classes and specs? So it's not specific ones.
10 of them. That's a lot.
Okay, so when it comes to any type of endgame content, I think one of the criteria that would put a class in front is the group. I hesitate to call it raid buff because it's a group buff.
Utility or group buff?
Group buff. So you would definitely see Druid. Mark of the Wild is very good. It's one of the best buffs out there, being versatility across the board. And whenever you're talking about the top of the top, you're talking about percentage increases where people can actually take advantage of that, like extra 1%. So Druids will always be good. And I can mention Mages as well because Arcane
Warlocks as well. I mean, if you're going to talk about...
Yeah, that's like a totally different can of beans. That's mostly for raids, and that is true. You never... like the amount
There's no raid without a Warlock.
Imagine
I
think
he probably is more interested top specs. He's probably interested in damage.
If you're talking about damage, then that just comes down to tuning. It doesn't really... Well, in terms of damage, we can talk about damage profiles. In raids, you want very accessible and flexible burst damage. Yeah. Whenever that's what you probably prioritize over like consistently high damage. Whenever there's a boss like, okay, guys, this is the moment when we sync all like Silken Court. When we stun the boss and it gets 100% more damage, that's when you want the burst damage, like small.
You want access to very quick damage, like not 2.5 minute, 3 minute bursts of damage. No, 1 minute burst damage.
I mean, you can have 3 minutes, but then you would force people to hold that off, right?
You could probably talk about executes as well. Like good classes with good execute scenarios. It's like right now, like you want to do a prediction. Well, we already did that, I believe. It's when you're talking about the top DPS, it's very hard to like make a proper informed prediction because you will see even after the race to world first, big changes are going to come all across the board. Now you're influenced on what you're going to see on the logs and our Archon DGG and or the tier list and everything like that. you're going to be influenced by that, and you're going to think, okay, so yeah, it's Fury Warrior, it's Arcane Mage, it's enhancement Shaman, Alto Rogues, Frost Decay, all of that, right? This is what's happening now. But you have to take into account the profile of that fight. Like, Frost Decay is really good right now. It does a lot of damage, but it's so cleavy. It's cleave, it's second to none. And this raid has a lot of cleave. And you're going to definitely see somebody perform really, really good if they're going to have that cleave damage. Similar story with Fury Warrior. Now, if you're going to talk about Mythic Plus, it's a whole different can of worms, because what is the highest key push? I think they're doing 13s right now, right? Some of them.
The 11s that I've seen today, I think people are probably good enough. Well, 12 is a big step up. Let me actually refresh this right now.
You have Radar.io?
Oh, no, there's 12s. Yeah, there's one 12 done in time that's recorded by Radar.io.
Okay, so what's the comp there? Can you see it?
Vengeance, Resto, Shaman, Frost Mage, Augmentation, and Frost Decay.
Yeah, so there you go. All right. Now this is because this is the thing. You see what's happening right now, and it's a lot of influence from the raid as well. But in a month from now, I think a month is quite okay. Like, the race to world first will end, and in a month from now, you're going to see a totally different scenario where specs are going to be changed, nerfed, buffed, and most of them being brought to line. Okay, they don't really want to take the risks on doing too many changes during race 12 first, although it wouldn't be the first time, but they kind of like want to keep it like this. So after 11.1.5 will drop, and that is speculated to be dropping on the 22nd of October, by then we should probably see the end of race to world first, and you're going to see a lot more changes. But traditionally, let's give a proper answer, right? Because we're giving excuses here. Traditionally, mages,
mages, druids,
rogues.
Rogues?
Yeah, rogues.
Warlocks in raids, because
sure.
I don't think warlocks
always in raids, yeah. Priests,
augmentation for sure.
Priests with PIs, if it's still a thing for a couple of specs that benefit a lot. Like, I could also see like the Chaos brand from Demon Hunters, either if it's Vengeance or Havoc.
That's exactly, I think that's the only reason why we've just seen the top keep being a Vengeance. It's because from what I understand, Vengeance is not as tanky, and I've tested it as well.
No, but it enables the Frost Mage. Yeah, that enables some of the damage from
Chaos
Frost Decay.
brand. All of the specs in the game except Warrior and Outlaw.
No, Outlaw will have shadow damage from
and maybe
set.
Windwalker. Yeah, but that's a very small part of your overall damage overall, and probably Windwalker. Even though Windwalker, like, Warrior is the only class in the game that has no magical damage. Maybe with the exception of Mountain Thane. So pretty much Chaos, that's what I meant with Mages. Arcane Intellect is not only good for your caches, but it's also the only real buff to healers throughput, that and Mark of the Wild, right? As far as I know. To buff healer healing.
Yeah.
So that those are usually what you will see.
Oh, we cannot forget Augmentation. That is always going to be there. So if it's one guarantee, top spec Augmentation is going to be there for sure.
All right, guys, what's your favorite melee DPS so far, outside of the fun melee that we made last week, which is mostly from my perspective, but I mean, the obvious for you would probably be your main.
Well, on Holy DK, for sure. Well, I main it, so it's pretty hard not to put it out like in front of the line. Unholy Decay is, in my opinion, one of the most fun melee specs in a lot of compartments. You have like you have a lot of flexibility in your rotation, much more than you had prior to War Within. That's one thing. A little bit restricted with the talent build, so there's not there's kind of like cookie cutter talent builds over there, but there's still like, even in raid, this one thing I love about this raid and playing on Holy DK, when there's like the pure single target fights, I have the commander build, Commander of the Dead, which is really good. But then in all other fights, I play the Super Strain build, which basically delivers a whole bunch of diseases and increases them everybody, and that's really cool, right? Like, I have this flexibility still. It doesn't really change that much my gameplay, apart from pressing a lot more epidemic at some point, but I really love it. The fact that you have like to manage multiple resources, quote unquote, not all of them are resources, but you can call them that, like the runic power, the runes, and also the wounds on your target, pop them and shit. So it's a battle. I love I think the biggest attraction for me to Unholy, and this is why I never like dropped it, is this gameplay loop, which may be outdated for some, but for me, discovering it for the first time last year,
Oh, yeah,
the balancing of resources is always something really cool for me. Like, you know, and I always like, this is one spec where I clearly always look at my logs and compare with others and see if I like did it right and did the management right, because it's such a neat mini game to play within the spec, right? I also love Red Paladin, but Red Paladin doesn't have this. Like, I looked at my logs on Red Paladin, it's like, oh fuck, I didn't press judgment that one time. Wow. So it didn't really give me that in-depth stuff. But fun is very subjective. For me, fun has to have a little bit. This is why I love specs like Rogue, Outlaw, Sub, right? They need to have a little bit more interesting mechanics for me to, like, you know, really get that motivation and incentive going. Like, if I'm shit, I know I'm shit, I'm starting the raid shit, I'm starting Mythic Plus shit. And then that motivates me to, like, okay, I can do this. I can get better. Let me understand this. Let me talk to people. Let me read up on shit. Let me look at logs, right? So always for me, Unholy and I would say all rogue specs. I haven't touched Assassination, but the few times I touched Assassination, I loved it as well.
Sure. As it stands for me, my favorite specs, I mean, if you haven't watched the recent tier list, it changed a little bit in terms of melee. I have fallen very much in love with Enhancement Shaman, and it's a little bit different to why Marcelian likes Unholy. Enhancement just has a lot of build diversity, and I like to feel like I get engaged with the class fantasy a lot. I can play the Storm Lightning builds, like there's 2 variations of it. Then I can also play the Elementalist build that goes heavy into Elemental Blast, and it does a lot of single target damage. It can do a lot of burst AoE damage. It can do funnel damage. That's great, and I kind of really like that fantasy.
Plus the sounds.
Oh my god! And the
Yeah,
and the thunderclaps again and again and again. That's really cool.
Best in game.
Something outside of enhancement, something that really surprised me, and if I had to main a melee spec, this would probably be it. If I can only main one melee spec, oddly enough, I would main Fury Warrior. Fury Warrior with Slayer has actually revived my love of Warrior and makes me feel like it's the only Warrior feeling spec out there in the game. When
it would be meta.
It's very brutal and savage, and you just go in and you just destroy. Like, it actually embodies the Fury mentality that you want by just being the biggest dude out there with the biggest weapons, and you go in, and when you press your Blaze and Odin's Fury, nobody's doing more damage than you, and that's how it should be. Maybe at the end of the pool or at the end of the dungeon is more balanced, but when I go in and I pop my stuff, you have to know that that's the biggest stuff that can happen in that fight, and that's kind of like the only selling point that I have for Warrior right now, and Prot Warrior as well. But in terms of melee, it would be Fury Warrior and Enhancement Shaman. There are a lot of good melees out there, but these would probably be the ones that I would stick to.
Yeah, I would say it's a fair and legit option for fun, but fun is very subjective, obviously. So.
For sure. No question here. Just wanted to congratulate you both and wish you all the best. Oh, appreciate it. Prince Vega.
Who is it?
Prince Vega.
Prince Vega. Oh, that's awesome. Play Street Fighter, maybe?
Yeah, a little bit. What you guys think about Survival Hunter? I don't know how, because I know you played a lot, and I don't know how much you've seen the rework and what's coming in 11.05.
I played a lot way back in BFA, and I used to love it back then, but it wasn't that focused on bombs. I don't know about the rework, and I honestly have no idea how it plays right now.
Let's just say if you would play it, I'm pretty sure you would like it. You would like it.
Yeah, you said that. You said that, but I'm too afraid. So right now on my table, I have other specs on the list, right? So it's not going to be survival, but I have to say, the moment I played it back in BFA, and I did start it off playing it in arenas because it was really awesome, and then I got into Battle for the Zaloror with Awaken. You remember Awaken, the guild?
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, that's where I got in, and they not forced me. They asked me nicely to change to BM for the Crucible of Storms raid, but I really loved Survival Hunter back then. After that, I felt it was going to shit, and basically I've never touched it again.
Well, for all of the reasons that you said you liked Unholy, that's the closest spec is probably Survival, and it might be the only spec that might trump Unholy in terms of resources management. Because you have a lot of resources that you have to juggle.
Focus.
You have focus, you have kill command charges, you have tip of the spear charges, you have bomb charges, and you have, I think, butchery now and some cooldowns. And in the 1105, it just makes everything flow smoother and it makes it more engaging.
Right, 1105s. All right, so
Yeah.
I will definitely test it out.
I would recommend you do, because I feel like this is the closest experience and the only spec that can probably trump what you like about Unholy in terms of a melee spec with how you juggle. It
That's
depends
a
on how
high
that's-
mountain to climb.
Yeah, but listen, I stand by it. And that's pretty much what I think. I think survival right now is just a little bit too much in terms of like everything that's shoving down your throat. It's all of the resources all of the time, and it's not very clear what you have to do. Obviously, if you follow a guide, you do, but you shouldn't have to follow a guide to realize what is the most important thing to do. But 1105 is basically addressing almost all of that from what I've played survival so far, and it's looking like it's going to be good. Survival is one of my all-time favorite specs. Not right now, but in 1105 is looking like it's going to solve a lot of problems.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay. What's the S tier DPSs? I think right now it's probably Frost Death Knight, Fury Warrior, and Arcane Mage across the board. The top 3 DPS specs in the game.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
overall,
overall, that's pretty much it. All right. Okay, this is pretty much.
We wrapping it up?
I think we're wrapping it up. We've covered most of the stuff. We're obviously gonna do this next week as well.
Well, stop that flame. Stop. Stop it. Yeah, so every Thursday you can catch us talking shop about World of Warcraft, what's been happening, news, changes, all of that. You can see we've been talking with you guys. This is like basically the format of the show. We have a lot of topics to go through, and then close to the end, we take into account your questions, your comments, all of that. So catch us next Thursday on 10 a.m. PST and 7 p.m. CET. Thank you everybody for joining, for commenting, all of that, and we shall catch you next week and tomorrow stream. Tomorrow we're playing more Fire Mage. Yes, it's gonna be lovely. So make sure to catch Flamer struggling more with his Fire Mage. All right.
See ya, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Button is the button. I'm not doing it again. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, hello, we're back. Well,
what?
For more, no, bye.
Ooh, what the hell is happening? All right, that's it. It's done. It's done, Flame. You can see what I'm doing. You can see what I'm doing. All right, bye.